but I usually mention this show called Red Eye, and I know you're about as sick of that as you are Weinstein stories. So I apologize in advance. But I always mention that because it was a big part of my life for about 7 years at Fox News. And the person that was helmed the show was one Greg Gutfeld. And I've known Greg since 2000, a long time. He was my editor at a very different magazine called Stuff. Now, on the surface, it didn't seem very different. We were the same company as Maxim. We had the same type of cover girls as Maxim. But whereas Maxim was very base and would, in their captions, nothing to take it away. It was, as we call in the business, the flagship. But Maxim, the captions and copy to the lesser extent would be along the lines of, hey, man, check out this chick, sports, insert kicker here. We, to differentiate ourselves, would draw you in with our women and then tackle you with our homosexual agenda. So our caption, it would be a bikini-clad woman, and then the caption would actually hit on the reader, something along the lines of like, "Hey, is she hot? So what are you doing later? You want to just sort of like hang out in my basement, maybe take our shirts off, do some working out, et cetera, et cetera." There was no reason that it should have, that magazine should have lasted as long as it did, because when you got past the women, it was a lot of stories about farmers with two-headed cows, lots of profiles of people that should be relegated to the freak show at Coney Island. It was rough. Some of the stuff was rough. I remember, I'm just having a flashback now of some of the photos that we had, and they're vomit-inducing. But also Alyssa Milano in a bikini, so yin and yang. Anyway, so Greg, the red eye apple did not fall far from the stuffed tree. There was the red eye thing was very similar. Had the same sensibilities, I guess, on Fox News. We had an array of very smart and funny guests. Invariably, it would be an ambassador alongside a comedian and a Mexican wrestler who would be wearing their mask while talking about the politics of the day. And there'd be all sorts of weird segments. We had yesterday Joshua McCarroll on, who would, as a shirtless correspondent, be our Matthew McConaughey correspondent. And of course, as you do in cable news, talk about all things Matthew McConaughey. So it was a lot of that, and we did that for about 7 years. Now, I will always describe my relationship with Gutfeld as like the stock market. It was there were a lot of highs, and there were a lot of lows. I don't think it was a bear market. I always forget which one's bad, the bear or the bull. I don't think it was a bull market when I left, whatever the bad one is. By the way, invest in mutual funds. As you can see, I've got the financial acumen to give such recommendations. But it was not great, and I had not heard from him in a long time. In the past couple of years, I've been freelancing. I've come on Compound a good amount of times. But then I finally got this show because, A, I was friends with Anthony, but also because Anthony was on Red Eye, and we would go out and drink afterwards and became buddies. And Anthony was, like, definitely a fan of the show. And we have 2 Red Eye events coming on today. I mean, gosh, I wouldn't have any guests if it wasn't for Red Eye. So then I get tweeted a couple nights ago, and, of course, couldn't be done any other way. It was very backhanded, but a review that Greg gave of this little nickel and dime show via one Dana Perino, who is a wonderful, wonderful woman who I miss very dearly. Dana Perino used to look at me at Fox News and say that I wasn't eating enough and bring me back a doggy bag from Del Frisco's like I was a goddamn developmentally disabled 8-year-old. And you know what? I ate up and all of it. I loved her for that. She was a sweetheart. I miss her very much. But anyway, she does this camera thing in the green room right before the 5 airs, and she was interviewing Gutfeld about what he did the night before, and this was his answer. If we can go to that.
Bill Schultz has a new show on Anthony Cuna's...
Oh, you were supposed to send me the thing.
I will one day.
Okay.
Anyway, he looks exactly the same way he does when he comes into work, when he used to come into work at Red Eye, which is his hair is soaking wet. He looks like he's been out all night. And he begins the show. The first thing he does is talk about how he's been out all night.
Is it funny?
I think it's like I like it because it's being able to watch Bill without having to be responsible for him.
Yeah.
Yeah. So it's like I could watch Red Eye and go, he's still the same.
That's why I got such a kick out of Red Eye. I loved it.
Yeah, because you didn't have to deal with everything going on in the whatever. But he has all these Red Eye guests. I turn it on. He has Josh McCarroll, who was my old booker.
He was on?
He's my
Matthew
old booker.
McConaughey,
Mike Baker.
Oh, that's great.
And
Gorgeous
Gavin
CIA.
McInnes. And then there was Paul
Harry,
Mercurio,
founder of Vice.
And then he had my other booker, Tara Jakeaway.
Her name's Tara, Greg. You worked for her with her for 3 years.
And
how do you look?
How did it feel?
it felt weird. He was doing a lot of old Red Eye shtick. I could feel like there were old
Did they bring
lines.
back Pinch?
No Pinch. Oh, he wouldn't bring back Pinch. Pinch was the talking New York Times paper that was actually Ailes' idea. He said you should he said you should get a talk.
I'll explain
It'd be
that
great if
later.
you
That
came up
hurts.
with a puppet that was the talking New York Times. And we did, and it was great.
Oh, hey, my sister's watching, Greg. She says, hey.
Tell her to go feed her cats.
Oh,
well. Brought back a lot of memories. I'll tell you what, I did have this puppet on the show, and his name was Pinch. And basically, the whole idea was that since Fox News is just always ragging on the New York Times, why don't we have a New York Times correspondent? And why not that New York Times correspondent actually be the New York Times, a.k.a. a talking paper that sort of had this effete ivory tower type voice. And first of all, Ailes did not come up with Pinch. I did. In fact, I remember I was talking to an ex of mine 2 days ago. She called about Lauren Sivan. She never calls me to ask about how I'm doing, but she was concerned about Lauren and all things Weinstein and DNA on plants. But I had not talked to her for about a year, but I told her about what Gutfeld said. She's like, I remember being with you. It was our first vacation since Red Eye had started, about 2 years into Red Eye. And we are having an ideas meeting, and of course, I was on speakerphone and in a pool. Unfortunately, it was a very cheap pool. Picture something that Clark Griswold would take his family to in the middle of vacation. Sorry about that, Sarah. But we were sitting by the pool, getting sunburned, and I told her right before the phone call, well, what about the puppet thing? And she's like, yeah, pitch that. I don't care. So I did, and Greg immediately liked it. But no, Greg, Ailes did not come up with Pinch. I did. I mean, that's intellectual property, you guys. You got to protect it. What Ailes did later on was he did name him Pinch after the publisher of the New York Times, Pinch Sulzberger. I can never pronounce his name correctly. But so Ailes did, and that was the first time I was. There he is. Oh, I hated that little fucker. It was the bane of my existence. The whole point of Pinch was that it was supposed to be sort of like maybe every once in a while Pinch would come on, but we never did every once in a while stuff on Red Eye. We would take something and just weep it and beat it until it was deader than Harvey Weinstein's career. And we did it with that stupid puppet. I basically had to strain, I'd be off camera, I'd have to have my jaw like this, and just basically talk like just give an answer as to how the Times would perceive whatever stories we were working on. And yeah, about 2 weeks in, instead of being called the New York Times correspondent, Ailes gave us a memo saying we are to direct him as Pinch now. And it was the first time Ailes ever had any comments about our show, and it was for a talking newspaper. Anyway. After that video came out, someone tweeted it to me. I watched it. And again, it was very backhanded. But you know what? He didn't have to say anything about the show. And it wasn't necessarily a slam. I would say, considering most people aren't even aware that this is a thing, I would put that in the category of a semi-good review. That's how I choose to look at it. So, it has been about 40 years since I have talked to Gutfeld. With probably the help of a little bit, maybe way too much whiskey, I emailed him. I emailed him the next night, I guess, and I said, because why the fuck not? You only live once. Unless you're Shirley MacLaine, you only live once, so why not, people? If I can impart on you any wisdom, it is why not. And you know what? I'll trademark that, because I'm sure no extreme Mountain Dew or export type company has come up with such a slogan. So I did, and to my surprise, well, what I did was I emailed him and said, hey, I know this is a shot in the dark, but any chance you would ever want to come on? And lo and behold, he replied back to me, and he said that if certain members of the Fox press said yes, he would like to come on, and that blew my mind. Well, more than it's already blown. I hate you chemicals, but it blew my mind even more. But then after that, I was like, I didn't. Fox News is not exactly a huge fan of mine. I mean, those that even remember that I was there, I don't necessarily know if they have positive feelings about me. And I had also recently gone out with the gorgeous, roving senior reporter Rick Leventhal a couple nights ago as well. I had drinks with him and casually mentioned it would be great to have him on the show. And he's been in a lot of war, or seen a lot of war, Afghanistan, Iraq, and what have you. And so maybe the PTSD kicked in. But he said yes as well, if I went through the proper channels at Fox News. So these proper channels I did not think would get back to me. They have. Right away, actually. They were really nice. In fact, it was odd. It did sound like they actually remembered me, which also blew me away. So they said yes. Rick is checking his schedule. I have not heard back from Mr. Gutfeld after they have said yes, but it would be an honor to have him. I owe him everything I know. He has taught me a lot. If I have any acumen for this type of stuff at all, it's because of him. Probably not, because I don't know what the word acumen means, so negate all of that. But I owe Greg a lot. We certainly didn't see eye to eye on everything, but that's mostly because of the height difference. I certainly would love to have him on. I think it would be a lot of fun. Talk about whatever he wants. We can certainly discuss my departure if he wants. I don't think that'll be his favorite topic, and I don't necessarily want to talk about it. And I believe there's a non-disclosure agreement that certainly doesn't want me to talk about it. But I think it would be really interesting, and I would be nervous too. I mean, I would be a little scared, but I would also really love it. It would be an honor. I told him as much. It would be an honor to have him on. So, Greg, it is up to you. This is certainly not the production value of Fox News. But God damn it, the people are just as gorgeous and hardworking. And I would love for you to meet them as well. But so there it is. I had mentioned it last night. I said that there might be someone who might be coming on and that it would be a surprising guest. I don't think it gets more surprising than Greg Gutfeld, although we might have Harvey Weinstein's brother on tomorrow. And that wouldn't even be that. Who cares about his brother? But that wouldn't even be that surprising. Well, let's get. Was there anything else I wanted to mention? That was a really long-winded story. But for those of you that knew Red Eye, I thought you might find that kind of interesting.